Am I wrong for not wanting to go to my husband's best friend's wedding? I honestly don't even know where to begin. I'm sorry if this is hard to follow. My husband, Wayne, is a nurse. 2 years ago, he enrolled in a super intense nursing program that crammed 4 years of school into just 1 year. It was made for people who already had a college degree and had done all the classes needed for the program. Wayne quit his job to focus on the program and pass the big nursing test. I supported him completely and told him, whatever you need to study and feel ready, I'm here for you. Wayne and I have been together for 15 years. We met in high school. During his first week in the program, Wayne met Bonnie and Gail, 2 other students. They all became friends and quickly started studying together every day for almost a year. They'd take turns going to each other's places for study sessions. They came to our place a lot because it was kind of in between their houses and the school. Since I worked during the day, they could study as long as they wanted. I liked Bonnie and Gail too. Eventually, we all became friends, and Bonnie's boyfriend, Dan, and Gail's girlfriend, Tanis, would join us for dinners. No one needs to ask, but I had zero issues with Wayne making female friends or spending time with them. Wayne and I are best friends and have a really strong relationship. I completely trust him. Not to mention, Bonnie and Gail were both dating other people, so it wasn't a big deal. In fact, Wayne and Bonnie even helped Gail sort out some relationship drama and she ended up breaking up with Tanis. We got together less after that, since Tanis was gone and Dan worked long hours. Fast forward to graduation, Wayne and Bonnie decided they wanted to work in the ER, and Gail chose a less intense job. Wayne and Bonnie both got jobs at the same ER and their shifts were similar, so they were co-workers. We thought it was great because that ER is in a rough part of town and they see a lot of really serious accidents. It's good that Wayne and Bonnie can debrief after shifts and talk to each other about what they saw. Gail had to work the night shift, which was the opposite schedule from Wayne and Bonnie. Over the past year, Wayne and Gail barely spoke. He said they both got really busy and just lost touch. Bonnie still talked to Gail regularly. Around this time, Dan proposed to Bonnie. It was a long time coming, and we were all so happy for them. Bonnie told us that we were definitely invited to the wedding, and that it would be a lot of fun. Then they told us that the wedding would be in a state far away, a 12 to 13-hour drive or a plane ride. It would cost us a lot of money to go, but we said we'd do our best. Bonnie asked Gail to be a bridesmaid, which was great because it would be like a little reunion. And that's when I found out I was pregnant. We had been trying for a while, and we were so excited. It would work out perfectly. Our baby boy would be about 9 months old by the time of the wedding, old enough that my parents could watch him for a day or two while we went. Now, fast forward to last week. On Tuesday, Bonnie personally gave Wayne our wedding invitation. I was able to get the time off work, and we had been saving money for the trip. Then, on Friday, after their shift, Bonnie pulled Wayne aside. She said she and Dan had a big fight because she invited us to the wedding. Wayne was confused. Why would Dan be upset about that? Then Bonnie said this: since Wayne, Bonnie, and Gail met in nursing school, Gail has been under this strange idea that Wayne was in love with her. Apparently, Bonnie and Dan talked to Gail almost every day to tell her that Wayne and Bonnie were just friends. Gail would insist that Wayne was in love with her. Bonnie told Gail that she was right there when certain things happened, and that nothing was going on between them. But, as time went on, Gail started badmouthing me to Bonnie and Dan. She would say that I was controlling and mean to Wayne. She started saying that she needed to break up with Tanis because she and Wayne were going to be together. Gail was convinced that Wayne would leave me for her. Bonnie and Dan kept telling Gail that she was wrong and that nothing was going on. When Wayne told them that we were trying for a baby, Gail went on to imagine that Wayne and her were going to have kids. Bonnie told Wayne that at one of our dinners, just the 4 of us, I said something that Gail repeated to Dan. This was around the time of a school shooting where someone used a special kind of gun. I used to be a teacher in the city for 5 years, and during that time, I was in 5 lockdowns. One of those lockdowns even involved an intruder with a gun. I'm not against guns, but I feel really strongly about keeping schools safe. That means we need rules about guns. Dan likes guns and even has one himself. He's also very careful with guns. Gail told Dan that I said something like, anyone who owns that kind of gun has the blood of those children on their hands. I can absolutely say that I never said that. It's such a horrible and hateful thing to say. It wouldn't even cross my mind to say that. If anything, I would have said that it's wrong that that kind of gun is so easy to get, and that we need rules to make sure tragedies like that don't happen again. Regardless, Gail told Dan that I supposedly said that. According to Bonnie, Gail talked to Dan without Bonnie even being there. She didn't even know about the conversation until later. Dan was really angry and hurt by what Gail said. He chose to believe her and be angry with me. Dan decided he didn't want to see Wayne and me anymore, and he lied about his work schedule so he wouldn't have to hang out with us. It wasn't until a couple of months later that Bonnie invited Dan to dinner at our place, and he said, why would I spend time with those people after what they said? Bonnie was confused and Dan told her what Gail told him. Bonnie told Dan that I never said those things and that Gail was lying. By then, Dan had convinced himself that I said those things and didn't think Gail would lie to him. After they graduated, they didn't hang out as much because of their schedules. Gail thought Wayne was deliberately ignoring her and trying to break up with her. She continued to badmouth me and Wayne. When Dan found out Bonnie gave us a wedding invitation, he was furious. He thought she went behind his back to invite us, even though we had hurt him. When Wayne told me all this, I was in shock. We had been totally unaware of the whole thing for 2 years. Bonnie had acted like nothing was wrong. Wayne and Bonnie talked on the phone after almost every shift and she never even mentioned it. And Gail was still in the wedding party, even though she lied about us, and Dan still hated us. Bonnie wants Wayne and me to be at her wedding. She said she can't get married without her best friend, Wayne, there. First, Bonnie has been lying by omission for 2 years. To be honest, I don't trust Bonnie anymore. I wonder if there's more to this whole thing and if we're missing something. Second, I'm offended that Dan thinks I said those terrible things. And I'm shocked that he would blindly believe Gail, especially after all those crazy things she said about Wayne. Third, why would I want to go to a wedding where Gail is a bridesmaid? What if she starts something and causes a scene? Plus, why would I want to spend thousands of dollars to travel to a wedding where I'm uncomfortable? And I'm leaving my baby. While Wayne is just as confused as I am, he still wants to go. He's become close to Bonnie because they work together and he really values her as a friend. While I understand, I just can't get over this. Bonnie is trying to talk to Dan and convince him that we're good people and that Gail is twisting the truth. Honestly, after being kept in the dark for 2 years, I don't want to have to convince anyone that we're innocent. We should get an apology from all of them. Wayne and I are still waiting to hear back from Bonnie about her talk with Dan and Gail. Right now, it's May 21st, and Gail is still a bridesmaid, and Dan still doesn't want us at the wedding. Am I wrong for feeling this way? What would you do? Edit, my husband and Bonnie say, trauma bond, all the time. It's a kind of joke, but they mean it. That's how they describe their friendship since working together in the Wayne said that he wouldn't go if Gail is there. The main reason is that we don't want to risk her starting a scene and ruining Bonnie's wedding. Bonnie also said that she's thinking about taking Gail off the bridal party. But she's afraid because she doesn't want to make Gail feel worse, or make her feel even more unstable. Gail's been going through a rough time with her mental health lately, so Bonnie is hesitant to ask her to step out of the wedding. I'm not saying Bonnie or Gail are right, but I get why Bonnie hesitates. Edit 2. I'm not actually pregnant anymore. I had my baby boy in January, and he'll be about 9 months old when the wedding is. Update, Wayne and I sent Bonnie a message saying that if Gail was at the wedding, we wouldn't go. Bonnie said, I totally understand and I would never want you to be uncomfortable ever. I'm so sorry this is happening and I hate that I had to tell you guys. I wish I could have kept it to myself so no one else got hurt. Gail and I are up in the air right now. I don't have a single thought on our friendship. Dan is getting better slightly. He's not as angry, or I should say his anger has shifted to Gail, but he's still frustrated. Now we know she never would have told us. I haven't talked to Wayne yet to see how he feels about this. Update, thanks for the thoughtful and honest answers. I'm pretty straightforward, so it's good to know that random people on the internet think this whole thing is ridiculous and childish. I know that this feels really high school-ish. I totally agree, that's what makes the whole thing even weirder. Since the last update, Wayne and I talked and decided it was fair to reach out to Gail. As many of you pointed out, we only have Bonnie's side of the story. Gail admitted to having a crush on Wayne but denied everything else. As we've already established, Gail isn't really someone we can trust, so we took her response with a big grain of salt. Wayne and I took screenshots of the texts and sent them to Bonnie. We made it clear that we weren't keeping anything secret from her, and that we expected Gail would reach out to Bonnie and let her know we talked to her. Bonnie was upset that we talked to Gail, and said she didn't know what we hoped to gain by talking to her. Bonnie said that her life was exploding, and that while wanting more information is understandable, it wasn't helping her. What made me laugh is that she said she wished she would have had a say in how the interaction was navigated. Like, yeah, same. I wish we had the option to choose how we responded, but I digress. Bonnie decided to call Wayne. I was at work, so I couldn't hear the conversation. Since Wayne answered the call, I realize it gave her a chance to manipulate him, which I did point out to him later. Long story, already way too long, Bonnie said that her and Dan are having problems that have nothing to do with all this, and this whole thing was just making things worse. I know, no. Us talking to Gail just stirred up even more trouble for Bonnie, X2. Wayne told Bonnie that he knows she has a lot going on, but it doesn't change what she did to us. He basically told her that it was a result of her own actions. Bonnie asked Wayne, do you want to step back from our friendship? He said no, I can feel your disgust, just keep reading. When Wayne was telling me about it, I was trying to stay calm and let him finish. This is what I told him. Bonnie knowingly lied to us the whole time we've been friends with her. If she lied for that long, what else has she lied about? She knew Gail was unstable but thought it was okay to be friends with her and invite her into our home. Bonnie and Gail don't respect me. It's obvious because Gail talked bad about me the whole time and wanted to break up our marriage. Bonnie thought it was okay to let Gail have these delusional ideas and keep hanging out with us. Plus, as a medical professional and a friend, she should have encouraged Gail to get help. Bonnie knew that Gail had lied to Dan, but she didn't correct him or tell us about it. She was okay with Dan thinking I was a terrible person and believing the lie. Bonnie continued to treat Gail as a friend and made her a bridesmaid. She made it really clear that she doesn't care about me or my marriage to Wayne. She wanted to invite us to her wedding, against the groom's wishes, knowing that Gail would be there, which could have been a disaster. Why would we even go to their wedding? It's supposed to be about the holiness of marriage, which Bonnie and Dan clearly don't care about. Why would we waste money on going to their wedding, to celebrate their marriage, when they don't care about ours? How can you still call Bonnie a friend after you know all this? I gave Wayne time to think about everything. I didn't want him to answer right away because I wanted him to be sure of his decision, knowing the consequences. Eventually, Wayne said that he doesn't consider Bonnie a friend anymore. He hesitated before because he was just so sad and disappointed in her. I think he trusted her so much, and since everything she did was totally out of character, it was a lot for him to process. This whole thing is so immature and childish that you want to make it more complicated than it is, just so that the dots connect. But it's surreal that Wayne was having a hard time seeing it clearly. I told Wayne that we needed to tell Bonnie that things were not okay with us, and that she needed to figure out her priorities and decide where she belonged. Wayne was hesitant at first, because he didn't want to make her feel worse. I reminded him that Bonnie said the same thing about Gail, don't upset her. And look what happened with her. We weren't telling Bonnie that we were breaking up with her as a friend. We were just putting our friendship on hold so she could figure out her relationships. We're willing to talk to her later about being friends again, but we're keeping her at a distance until she can prove she's trustworthy. But it all depends on what she decides to do about Dan and Gail. We decided to wait a couple of days to tell Bonnie about our plan so that we could be as calm and polite as possible. You're probably wondering about Dan. To be honest, Mayor, if he's so sensitive about guns, why didn't he just ask us what we said? It wasn't even that big of a deal. Hopefully, we'll have very little contact with Dan in the future. As RuPaul says, what other people say about me is none of my business. And not just because I didn't hear about it until 2 years later. Bazinga. Wayne and I are in a good place. We talked about how he can't make everyone happy, and that his family should come first. While we don't want to be mean or ignore our friends, how things affect our family has to come first. This is where we are now. If you want another update, let me know. Thanks again for all your responses. It really helped me to feel validated. Added comment, after thinking about everything, Wayne came to the conclusion that Bonnie isn't a friend. I'm not going to lie and say his first reaction wasn't hurtful. I told him that, but I also reminded him that he needed to think about all this and decide how he wanted to move forward. It can be really sad when you lose touch with friends who aren't really grown up. A lot of you probably won't get this reference lol, but there's a scene in a Bob's Burgers episode where Linda makes Louise go to a sleepover. It gets crazy, and Tina and Jean end up being human shields during a pillow fight. Tina, is this your first time being used as a human shield? Jean, yeah. Tina, this is my third time. You're doing great. In terms of dealing with petty, dramatic people, this isn't my first rodeo. Unfortunately, Wayne is too optimistic. He always sees the best in people. Does that make him naive sometimes? Sure. Does that make him a wonderful friend and partner? Absolutely. But is it incredibly frustrating when he needs to think everything through and then comes to the same conclusion that I did, the cynic, hours ago? Yup. Blank. I am not the original poster. Please don't contact or comment on the linked posts.